So today we're going to talk about playoffs and not specifically talk about what happened in this playoffs, but what's going to happen in terms of the playoff format in the future. Because yesterday I had read a article from the Athletic talking about how MLS is thinking about overhauling their playoff format, and there's been rumors that this could happen because as it has been the case for the past couple of years. It feels like the playoff format has been changed almost every couple of years. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago we used to have a format where there's like two-legged affair in those conference semifinal and conference final matchup, and then we of course keep adding team because there's more teams that is coming into the league, and it feels like we're going to do it again. But what's interesting about this new overhaul is something that is just in an extreme level, and there's been a lot of backlash in terms of this new playoff overhaul that MLS might do, and that a lot of people do not like how MLS is going in terms of this direction of this playoff overhaul. And in this video, I'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll also talk about some of the methods that they can basically change the playoff format, because again, I feel like it's imminent that the playoff format will change, because by the time when we get to 30 teams in MLS, I think we're going to have, once again, the playoff expanded. And not to mention, with Apple TV coming into next year, and that they have rights to not only the regular season game, but also the postseason game, and knowing that they want extra playoff games for that revenue. Yeah, that's why I think the playoff format could be changing starting next season. So the new overhaul playoff format will kind of be like a World Cup kind of playoff format in the playoffs. You have 18 making into each conference instead of the 17, so there's going to be 16 teams in total. It's going to be a World Cup style format. Once the playoffs begin, there's going to be 4 teams in 4 different group, and as it is the case with the World Cup format, they will basically play each other once, and the top 2 of each group will advance to an 8-team knockout round, which will be single elimination, and the total of those matches will be 30 in total. Now, obviously, the reason why there's a lot of backlash in terms of this is the fact that, we already have something similar to that in the League Cup, and that I feel like it's unnecessary, the fact that we once again have this, and not to mention that does kind of brings this playoff more like kind of a crapshoot, because who knows, in the World Cup format, maybe one team might do well, or maybe one team that didn't do well in the regular season, but they just made it and they somehow do well in the playoffs, and vice versa. Yeah, that's why it creates a bit of a problem. But for me, most of the reason why I think this is kind of a bit of a silly idea is that we already had that in the League Cup. There's no need to kind of have it again in the playoffs. And I get that it does bring more matches, but at the same time, one of the things I will say about the World Cup style format, and if you have seen some of those World Cup kind of games, is that maybe sometimes teams might be a little bit conservative in terms of some of these games, and they don't really turn up until like the second and third match day, or in case there are some times where teams might turn it up in the first game, but then they maybe go a little bit conservative. And then what happens if you have like a matchup where it's between a team that will clearly not make it into the playoffs against another team that won't make it into the next round? Then that's kind of meaningless. So yeah, it creates a lot of problem in terms of that itself, and that again, there's a lot of people that do not like this overhaul, and that hope that is not going to be the case. So instead of this overhaul, what can we do in terms of changing the playoffs? Well, the first method is pretty simple. Just keep the same playoff format. I mean, just have 17 make it in each conferences. The top seed gets a bye, and then after that, it's a single elimination. Though the disadvantage of this format, and I'll mention the disadvantage in each of these formats, is too short of a playoff under the Apple TV deal, or under what Apple TV wants to do. Again, one of the reasons why they want to change the format is that they want to have more playoff games so you can maximize revenue and rating, and that having just the amount of games that we have, which I think we only have like 13 games in the playoffs this season under the new format, it's way too short, and that Apple TV wants more playoff game and just want more excitement in general. Method 2, well, it's pretty much the same thing, except let's make it 16 team in terms of the playoff format. And this has been one that I think happen because of the way that, again, once we get to 30 teams and once you have 15 teams in each conferences, it's getting to a point where, I think they might need to add another team into the playoffs just to make it a little bit fair, because then it gets a little bit difficult for teams to, of course, make it to the playoffs, and then we're going to have a lot of discussion of, maybe this team would have been good enough in the past to make it to the playoffs, but this season, because there's only a limited spot, they're not good enough to get in. So, and not to mention, if you have like a 16-team playoff format, it's pretty much balanced. Like it creates a situation where you're going to have like playoff game between all of these teams in the first round. And of course, as I mentioned, 8 teams will make it into each conference, single elimination. And again, the disadvantage of this is still too short. Like I think it does add 2 extra games, but still, Apple TV will want more than that. So the other method we can also use, maybe Apple TV might feel it might be a great idea to add more games, is go back to the old playoff format that we used to have with the 2-legged affair. So basically 8 teams make it to the playoffs, and the single elimination will happen in the first round, but then for the rest of the way until the MLS Cup final, we're going to have 2-legged affair. Now, obviously, the big disadvantage of this is the reason why we got rid of this in the first place, which is the fact that the first leg always tends to be very boring. Like the first leg, it always tends to be a situation where the away team plays so much conservative soccer that it doesn't bring any excitement into the playoffs. And again, one of the things we want in terms of these single elimination playoffs is that we want entertainment, and we want to have that kind of sense for both of these teams that this is winner take all. Like there is no tomorrow. You got to give it your best. Whereas if you go with a 2-legged affair, in the first leg there will be tomorrow, there will be a second leg. So we've seen before where teams just being a little bit conservative in the first leg, and it just makes it boring to watch. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we got rid of the 2-legged affair, and also not to mention less emphasis during the regular season. Again, one of the reasons why we go with the single elimination is home field advantage. Like home field advantage is a real thing in the playoffs. You look at this season in the playoffs, there is not a lot of road teams that have been able to win a road playoff game. In fact, I think there's only been 2 road teams that's been able to win a road game this season. So that emphasis toward the regular season is huge, where you get a better, the analytics still says that you get a better chance of moving on into the next round if you do get home field advantage. And with the 2-legged affair, that pretty much is throw it away, because you basically will always get at least one home game when you get to the second round and even into the conference final. So that pretty much bring a little bit less emphasis during the regular season, which is exactly what MLS does not want to do. They want the regular season to mean something for a lot of these teams. Now, method 4, that we can change the playoffs, and this is kind of a crazy idea, but why don't we go with kind of how the traditional way? Well, I wouldn't say the traditional way, but more like, let's go with this big. Just pretend MLS is just a single league, and just pretend conference is not a thing, and basically go with a 16-team knockout tournament according to the Supporters Shield standings. And that basically means that 16 teams will play in this 16-team tournament, and this doesn't matter exactly where they are in the conference standing. It's all about the Supporters Shield standings. Now, obviously, the big disadvantage and why this is a huge no is travel. Travel is going to be a bit of an issue, because what if you say you have like LAFC, who is the number 1 seed, and they have to play against let's say Montreal in the 16th seed. Like that would be just a nightmare in terms of travel. And obviously the reason why we do go with conference is because the way that it limits the amount of travel that teams of course have to do. But again, the other thing that could be a huge disadvantage is uneven team get into both conference. And this is if conference doesn't exist anymore, but again, it makes it a little bit uneven in terms of teams make it. If you have like maybe sometimes 10 teams make it and only 6 of them made it in the Eastern Conference, that's gonna be a big problem. And not to mention, also with the uneven schedule, I don't think this way would work very well. But it's a crazy idea that I think I come up with, that if MLS does look into it, that could be a possibility. But again, the other big disadvantage is that you're basically getting the same disadvantage as what I said in the first two method. There's not enough games where Apple TV will really like to choose this method as a way for the playoff overhaul. So then we go to method 5, and the fifth method is very similar to how MLS is thinking about, which is let's go with a round robin in each conference. So basically that means that the top 6 will make it in both of the conference. Each teams of course will play 5 times against each other in kind of like a World Cup group stage kind of way, and then the top 2 of each group will make it to the conference final, and that's how we're going to do. Now, obviously, the big disadvantage is of course, or see the overhaul method of people don't want to have kind of like a crapshoot kind of World Cup format and a group stage kind of thing in the playoffs. And not to mention, the other big disadvantage is that, you know, only 6 teams makes it in both conferences, which means that, yeah, it's going to be really tough to make it to the playoffs in both of the conferences. And I know MLS is trying to eventually add more teams in so that it can add more playoff position. So yeah, this is another method that could have that disadvantage. And again, you know, it's just, this is very similar to the first method. It's just kind of tender a little bit, where it doesn't kind of sound like there's like 2 different groups, but more like just one group with a kind of World Cup format that's going on. Now, a bonus method that I decided to create is that, you know, as we get into potentially 32 teams, because I can definitely see MLS expanding beyond 30 teams. I mean, I know Don Gabber has mentioned the fact that 30 team will be kind of the limit. I don't think so. I think it's going to continue to expand at a point where, you know, there's been discussion of the fact that we're going to go to divisional play, and that we're going to pretty much split the Western Conference and Eastern Conference into 2 division, like what we see in the NFL, NHL, and also in the NBA. So in this case, let's say we have 32 teams, which means that there's going to be 8 teams in a division of 4. And what this mean is that basically the top 4 of each of the division, they of course will be moving on into the playoffs. The team that then will be seeded and of course play in a single elimination game, and the highest seed, or actually not the highest seed, I'm sorry, let me get rid of this. The highest seed, what I'm trying to say is that they need to of course get home field advantage. Now again, this is very similar to method 1, 2, and 3. It's just that this is, if the league does go into divisional play, I think this is going to be how they're going to do it. But again, there is that disadvantage with the way that, again, there's not enough game for Apple TV is going to be happy with just fewer games in the playoffs being very, very quick. But yeah, that is something that, you know, once we do get to that point where you just simply, I mean, I think there's going to be that point where there's just way too many teams to split into 2 conferences, and that MLS will definitely think about divisional play like the other league, and that if this is going to be how it is, then I think this is most likely going to be the playoff format that they're going to go with. But either way, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video, and let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the potential playoff overhaul and some of the methods that I've created. If you have your own method of how the playoffs format is going to change starting next season, let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.